Hi there! I hope that you are having a truly wonderful day today. In today's video, we are going to be doing our next Luciano the Jumper build. Very specifically, this time we are going to the world of Kill Bill, which is a pair of action-adventure movies revolving around Beatrix Kiddo, a former member of an assassination squad who was left for dead during a wedding rehearsal, and her partner was killed, and she was forced to spend years recovering. And when she awoke from her injuries after everyone thought that she was dead, she embarks on a revenge spree. These are very fun movies. If you have never seen them before, I would highly recommend that you go check them out. This particular jump covers both of the films. These movies are not older movies, but they're not young either. They came out in the very early 2000s, if I remember correctly. This jump is by Greeny. This is version 1.2. It is, as far as I know, the most recent version of this jump. It does have scenarios. We are going to be completing one. We are also going to be doing drawbacks, and we are going to be continuing with 1,000 choice points. We are going to be getting back to 1,500 very soon. For those of you who know anything about this particular jump, if you have been following Luciano the Jumper's journey, I'm sure you can imagine why we have decided to visit this specific setting. This setting has a very powerful, very important perk that we are going to be very delighted to be grabbing, and after this we are going to be starting to gradually go to more and more powerful settings. It's also worth noting that we are actually not going to be grabbing any items from this jump. There isn't anything here that is especially interesting to me, although there are plenty of interesting items. It's just that none of them are useful for Luciano the Jumper specifically. So rather than focus on them, we are going to be grabbing perks. We are also going to be taking drawbacks, and as I've mentioned before, we will be doing one of the scenarios. So let's go ahead and talk about these starting locations. In this particular setting, we are going to be selecting El Paso, Texas as our starting location. The reason we are selecting El Paso, Texas is that that is where Beatrix Kiddo starts her journey, at least relative to the events of the films. And our jumper Luciano is going to be taking on one of the scenarios where they are Beatrix's ally and they are embarking on the journey alongside Beatrix. That is also going to factor into the origin that we have decided to select, but now that we know our starting location, let's go ahead and talk about the origins. So, any origin can be taken as a drop-in, causing you to start at your chosen location with no new memories or history in this world. You may choose to be any age or gender you like at no cost, and of course you may choose a single origin. For those of you who don't know, there are perks that allow you to select multiple origins. We do not have any of those perks. It is entirely possible that we will get some of those. It's entirely possible that our next jump may actually have one of those perks, because there are multiple ways of acquiring that, and there are many different fascinating jumps that you could visit that would allow you to get that. But the origin that we are going to be getting is probably a little surprising to some, especially if you followed Luciano the Jumper's chain so far, because there isn't any single origin here that is a perfect fit for Luciano, but there are multiple action origins, and we're actually not going to be grabbing one of the action origins. Instead of grabbing any of those, we are going to be grabbing the specialist origin. You have dedicated a lifetime to a field of your choice and now reap the rewards of your passions. Perhaps like Hattori Hanzo, you are without peer in the art of crafting blades, or like Pai Mei, you have dedicated yourself to martial arts and have mastered a number of fearful techniques. Regardless of what your precise speciality is, you are the one people come to when they need the best, and your clientele may include assassins, crime lords, and sooner or later a very pissed off former bride. So the actual thing that we are going to be doing for this particular jump, we are going to be grabbing the specialist. We are going to be investing fully in the specialist's line of perks, and we are going to be grabbing the very special perk that I have talked about. When people see it, they will understand why it is that I find this perk to be so helpful. It's worth noting that it's not the only way of acquiring the thing that it gives you, but it is the most convenient that I have seen. It's just very fun and very handy. So for our speciality, I will say that we are just really, really, really good at forging guns specifically. I think that being good at forging guns specifically is helpful because, first of all, things like this, when you select an origin that gives you something like this, a sort of passive benefit that you've acquired as a result of your in-jump memories or experiences from before your character became the jumper, those things actually do stick with you because this is effectively something that you are purchasing, even if it is free. At least that's the way that I'm home ruling this, but that is the rule that I am the most familiar with. I've seen countless people say that that is the case, especially because in Origins, memories and skills are important and do have a significant role on a jumper's time in a jump. Even if you are a good person, if you take an evil origin, the evil origin's memories and experiences from before they became you are still real and are still a part of both the backstory and the world of the jumper, of the in-jump setting. So those things will still have an influence on you. So if your character was still sick and you don't have something that automatically heals you or makes you immune to sicknesses, those sicknesses would have an effect on you. But even if you had something that nullified all of those sicknesses, you would still have the memories of what it was like to be sick. You would still remember what it felt like and how it was to endure that. So this is something that is going to stick with Luciano. Luciano is not a hugely ranged fighter just because of super speed and stuff like that. And also telekinesis. Those things really invalidate a lot of the need for ranged fighting, but it's still very good for Luciano to have a diverse set of skills. So I'm very much delighted by the fact that it was easy for me to acquire something like, oh hey, you have a lifetime of experience in forging the yada 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 and selecting guns. I think that's going to be very helpful if we go to a setting like, for example, Fallout. Or John Wick, where guns are very important. It's also worth considering that a fair number of people really like going to this jump and then going to John Wick, especially because of a perk in the Specialist origin, which we are going to be getting, I will talk about, but let's go ahead and visit the perks right now. It's worth remembering, as is always the case, you receive a 50% discount on perks under your origin, and the 100 choice point perk for your origin is free. There are free perks. We are not actually going to be taking any of these. These are fun stylistic perks, and the one that you can see at the bottom of the screen, you don't have a future, is a very good quippy one-liner perk, which is fun for a lot of people. So these are things that you could just take if you wanted to take them, but we aren't actually going to be grabbing any of them. Instead, we are going to be hopping right on down over to the first perk of the Specialist line, which is Hanzo. Anyone who has heard of Luciano will have respect for them. Their name has the utmost respect attached to it, and even those who loathe Luciano can't help but feel impressed when they think of them. Their creations, whether they be martial arts techniques or priceless blades, are valued above all others, and merely attaching their name to them seems to immensely boost their value. Whatever Luciano does, you can rest assured that Luciano's name and the prestige associated with it will not be forgotten. This is a great perk. It is fantastic that it is free. It also synergizes very well with, for example, the generic First Jumps creator origin line, which has things that boost the effectiveness of the stuff that you make. Synergizing them with this whole line of perks is a very smart move. This is a very viable and very safe second jump. If your jumper invested heavily in their body mod, it may even be safe to come here as a first jump. However, I don't know if I'd recommend it as a first jump. I think that that would be potentially very dangerous. Retirement is the next perk in this particular origin, and it is going to knock down Luciano's total points to 900 because it is discounted. This makes it so that anytime that you decide to retire from something, such as making artwork or making weapons or selling drugs, People will no longer be able to force you to continue to do your stuff beyond simple persuasion. And even though they'll feel disappointed at the loss of you in your field, people won't even feel anger towards you, and you will never suffer retribution for turning down a client. It's your choice after all. It's actually worth noting that that final part, you will never suffer retribution for turning down a client, is very interesting. There are a lot of different readings of that matter a whole lot. It's just a very, very, very good perk. And if this is your origin of choice, then obviously you only have to pay 100 choice points for it. Or at the very least, if you chose the specialist as your origin, you only have to pay 100 points for it, which is something that is very neat. I really like that. I strongly recommend it for a number of different types of jumpers, and this is one of the more universally useful perks in this particular jump. Beyond Comparison, which is going to reduce our specific choice point total to 700, makes it so that your craftsmanship with weaponry is impeccable and yet somehow can still improve. Any blades you make are sharp enough to cut through lesser swords, and your guns will fire faster and penetrate deeper than anything any other human could hope to achieve. And with training, you will be able to you'll be able to increase the size of the gulf between you and competitors in your field. Eventually, your swords may become sharp enough to clean cut through the works of Hattori Hanzo, who again, famous swordsmith in this particular setting. This is going to knock our choice point total down to 700, and then after White Lotus, which is the capstone perk in this origin, we are actually going to have 400 total choice points, which is very interesting because the first time I went through and did the math for this video, I thought I would not have 400. I thought I would have 300. Because I am not good at math. And if I had only had 300, I would have needed a drawback. We are still going to be taking drawbacks, and we are still going to be doing the scenario. It's just interesting to me that we don't actually need them. I thought that was very amusing, and that means that I will be able to add that to my bank, which is nice because I like adding points to my bank. So cool. White Lotus is a martial arts perk. It makes it so that you are a martial artist on par with the legendary Pai Mei, a very famous master of martial arts in setting, who was one of the central backstory characters for a handful of different characters who are not backstory characters in Kill Bill's Volume 1 and 2. It makes it so that, among other things, you are capable of punching through wood and the human body at a distance of 3 inches, or even the legendary 5 points palm exploding heart technique, the deadliest blow in martial arts. That particular technique is very famous. Even if you've never heard of Kill Bill, you have probably heard of the deadly 5-point palm exploding heart technique. You might even have seen a video of it without knowing that you were watching Kill Bill. It's both memed and also very popular. This is a very good perk. It also synergizes remarkably well with a teaching perk that Luciano the Jumper acquired over in Luigi's Mansion. So I think that that's very neat. Now that we have 400 total choice points left, we are going to go ahead and hop on over to the Bride origin, which is the final origin in this particular jump. We are not going to be grabbing the Kiddo effect, Glutton for Punishment, or Comatose, but we are going to be grabbing the Inverse Ninja Law. This is a 400 choice point perk, and it makes it so that the threat level of any given opponent is inversely proportional to the number of said opponents. If you have to fight one ninja, they will pose a serious threat, but if you have to fight 100, you'll find yourself able to cleave through them multiple at a time with even a single blow. This law now applies to opponents that you will face, both here and in future worlds. The more enemies you take on at a single time, the weaker each will be individually. And of course, particularly distinguished foes will still rise above the crowd. They will find themselves worse off for having the cowardice required to try and face you in a group. this is an incredible perk for any action-oriented jumper. Any jumper who thinks that it is worth tackling multiple enemies at a time and getting in battles will benefit from having this. It's worth noting that this does not actually empower single enemies. If you are in a Mario jump and you're facing a single Goomba, they will only be as strong as a single Goomba is. That was mostly flavor text, but if you find yourself facing off an army of barbarians and you need to think of how it is that you can afford to face them on your own, this perk makes that a lot more viable. It's also worth noting that this perk is very handy if you are someone who likes to go in and fight large crowds of enemies, like in Hyrule Warriors, either one of those games, or the Dynasty Warrior franchise, or even a game like Bladestorm. If you want to go to any of those settings where you will be facing huge hordes of enemies and they will almost always vastly outnumber you, this is exactly the perk that you want to get. Luciano the Jumper already has perks that make it so that enemies gain no bonuses from trying to face Luciano in a group, but this just solidifies that. It does reduce our choice point total down to 0, but it is an indispensable perk. Anyone who goes to this jump early and does not grab this perk, regardless of whatever else they have in their build, is, in my opinion, making a mistake. I definitely think that this should be something that every jumper acquires, because the reality is it doesn't matter how long it takes you. If you are on a chain that is not themed, eventually you will be facing groups of enemies at a time. And while it's true that you will eventually have the power to do so easily, this makes that a lot easier. We are going to be skipping the items section just because there are no items that I want to get here. It's not that there are no good items. There are plenty of good items. I think that the concealed pistol is a fantastic item. I definitely think that it synergizes incredibly well with the Viper origin, and the Viper origin is a great do or die origin. If you are an assassin, if you are someone who does battle a whole lot, having the perks from the Viper is just really handy. There are other really good items here. I think the weapons rack item is a lot of fun. It makes it so that you will be able to always find items that you need and ammunition that you need on a weapon rack that you can place somewhere in your home. I think that there's a lot of fun to be had with that kind of item, but it's not what we are going to be grabbing. I thought about getting more points. I thought about doing this jump with 1500 choice points and grabbing stuff from the Queen origin, because both in items and in perks there's a lot of really cool stuff. The House of Blue Leaves and Crazy 88 are both really neat items. Having a home base item that serves as a profit location and also a gang of homies who are ready to defend you to their deaths, those are both just really rad items, but they aren't necessary for Luciano. Luciano already has a couple of different home base items, one of which we will be using. We will be using the mobile home from Animal Crossing for this jump's particular story video. We will also be using some of the other things like Luciano's boomerang and also the criminal organization, which in Luciano's case is not criminal organization, that Luciano got from the generic werewolf jump. Lots of old things are going to be making an appearance here because Luciano is not super interested in trying to speedrun this particular setting. They will be taking their time. They will be having fun. There are also really neat items like the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad, which is the man's capstone item. And then there is the Japanese Steel item, which is a masterclass weapon item. So as you can see, there's definitely reasons for someone to come to this jump and actually grab the items that they want to grab. It's just that Luciano wouldn't benefit in any special way from any of these items, just by the nature of Luciano's style of being a jumper. We are going to be skipping the drawbacks. We are going to be skipping the companions, not the drawbacks. We actually may select our first companion. I'm debating back and forth whether or not I want Beatrix to be our first companion, because, as a little bit of a spoiler, if you complete her scenario, the scenario where you are her ally, she can follow you on your chain. Luciano the Jumper will eventually have companions. I'm not sure if I want Beatrix and her child to be the first two. They might end up being the first two. Also, obviously, there are going to be spoilers in any one of these videos. I did not mean to spoil that. However, there's definitely stuff that has already been spoiled just by reading through this, so I don't feel bad. Although I probably will put a big spoiler warning in the description of this video, just so that way people know. But also, these movies are well over a decade old. In fact, I think the older one of this movie may actually be 20 something, although I'm not sure off the top of my head. But we are going to go ahead and go to drawbacks. The first drawback that we are going to be looking at is wiggle your big toe. This is an annoying drawback, but it's not something that actually makes life harder. This just makes it so that people's feet seems to be the focus of scenes, and people will do things with their legs. This is not a fun drawback. Luciano doesn't get any benefit from this, but I thought it was funny to have a drawback like this, so I also thought it was funny to include it. I'm going to see if there are any other ones that we want to grab. I do think that we are going to be grabbing the target drawback, which is a fun drawback. We are not going to be taking the crosshairs one because Beatrix is going to be our ally. But this is just a fun drawback that makes it so that this jump is a little bit more violent and so that the scene's a little bit more chaotic. So that's definitely going to be something that factors into our story here. We are now in the scenarios. I'm going to say that I'm going to make a final judgment as to whether or not Beatrix is going to be our companion at the end of the story video, which I will be filming tomorrow. But for right now, just know that the scenario that we are doing is the bridesmaid scenario, which makes us an ally of Beatrix. And our journey is to, the purpose of our journey is to help us achieve her vengeance. So we are going to be going through the story with her, and just some stuff to keep in mind. Some perks like A Wish for Peace are going to be factoring into this very prominently, because A Wish for Peace makes it so that when you defeat evildoers, some of their evil is undone, and is currently the only way that Luciano the Jumper has of resurrecting people. So there is some stuff that is going to be happening over the course of this jump that involves some older perks as well as some newer perks and some different skills that Luciano has developed. But our journey is going to revolve around helping Beatrix in much the same way as our last journey revolved around helping Luigi. We did not take the role of any in that jump, we didn't take the role of a protagonist, but we did take the role of a supporting character. But in this jump, we are going to be a wholly original character who was friends with Beatrix, who maybe even was involved in Beatrix's backstory in a sort of original sort of way, where maybe some of Beatrix's weapons were actually forged by the person who ends up becoming Luciano the Jumper. And Luciano the Jumper was there at the wedding rehearsal and was on Beatrix's side when she fell. So when she fell and the world shattered for her, Luciano the Jumper was there, and now that she is back and the time has come to extract vengeance, and in this case, yes, justice for Beatrix, we are going to be on her side. It's worth noting that Beatrix is not like some morally grand hero. Beatrix was one of the deadly vipers and has a history with numerous characters on the assassination squad. However, that does not mean that her fate should be met with her perishing at the hands of the deadly vipers. So that is going to be this video. We are going to be going ahead and ending the video right here, so that way we can go ahead and start working on tomorrow's video. I hope that all of you have a wonderful day, and I cannot wait to talk to you more about the wonderful world of Kill Bill. Bye-bye, everyone.